Hey, it's Mosquito, also known as Chris. Welcome to my son's room where we're going to turn this into this. This is the Lost Art Press boarded bookshelf. So we start with some beadboards on the back. We've got the shelves that are dadoed in the sides, and then we used these tapered square nails for nailing in the sides, and we also used cut nails for the backboards. Got to teach my son a little bit about cut nails. And overall, it's a pretty simple project and not a bad one if you are working with a young one. So this isn't really going to be a traditional project video. There's going to be a lot of time lapse because I don't really do much else when my son is helping me out. But here we're starting with the back beaded boards. I went and grabbed him a brush, showed him how to paint in those beads. And then I realized, you know what? We can do two brushes. And also, he's a lefty. So if I'm on the left, he's on the right. It actually works really well. We don't run into each other. So we're just using some real milk paint, Dragonfly for the color, and this was the part that he was the most excited about. At this point, I've created a scale model of the bookshelf, and then I've also cut out all of the pieces for it, ripped down the top back brace, the toe kick, the shelves, and the sideboards, and then also used the radial arm saw with the dado stack to cut out the dados for everything. And then my son came in and helped me with some of the joinery with the router plane. And then we moved on to painting because that was the thing that my son was excited about. So after we got the dados ready, we started to paint. And this actually worked out pretty well. I was able to just kind of show him, hey, this is kind of what you do. And he just ran with it. He did really well. So I think he and I painted probably 6 or 7 of the boards. And there was a few more that we needed. So I just ended up finishing those up after he went to bed just because bedtime and progress and whatnot. And then I also came back in and I did the second coat on most of them. I left a couple of the boards so that he could help me out with the second coat just to kind of see that. I think we did 3 or 4 of them just with the second coat for him. And then we got to wax some of the other ones the next day where we were putting the wax on and I kind of showed him it's a little bit different than painting. I kind of lead with the bristles rather than pull the bristles. And so he told me, okay, you do that half and I'll do this half. And so he was pretty into that part. And then the part that he thought was pretty fun too is I showed him, okay, now we have to buff off all that wax to make sure it's nice and smooth. He wanted me to show him, and then he got after it pretty good with that, put all of his weight behind it. And so now he had a couple of pieces to sand, and so I had him help me out with that. And then he had a lot of questions about a hammer. So I basically just kind of let it around with the hose and kept the hose from, the tail wagging the dog type of thing. And once again, bedtime, so I came in and finished up all the sanding just because I could tell that he wasn't that interested in the sanding pieces of it, but he thought it was kind of fun to work with that in the shop vac at the same time and whatever. So here I'm just prepping all the shelves and getting everything all ready to go. And because this is kind of more chemically, I decided to just go ahead and use the water-based polyurethane and pre-finish all of these parts just because it's a little bit more finicky than the paint. So I just figured if I can get all of this knocked out, then maybe we can just kind of get back to the rest of it and get to the pieces that he likes. Because truthfully, this is probably one of my least favorite things of a project is the time spent with the finish. And so I just come in with 220 grit and I kind of sand everything after the first coat. And I ended up doing a total of 3 coats of, this is the Minwax polyacrylic. I asked if he wanted to help with the glue up or the nails, and he said, just the nails, please. And so I asked him if he was okay if I just went ahead and glued it up after he went to bed, and he said, yep. So here we are gluing it up. I'm using some Titebond hide glue here because it's quick, it's easy, and I don't know, I like it. I later come in and slide in both the top backboard and the toe kick. So these are kind of the things that are going to help keep it square. And they sit in dados, so they're also pretty well holding in there. And so here I am gluing in the toe kick. I just kind of spread some glue on, and then on the bottom of the shelf. And then we'll come in and clamp that again. And I've got a scrap piece of board on the top shelf, so my clamps aren't going to dent it. And then I needed a starter board and an ending board. And so here I'm just fitting that ending board to roughly about where it's supposed to be, just to make sure that everything's going to fit once we actually start nailing backboards on it. And here we are all out of the clamps. I'm going to mark out where these need to be. So I have this piece of tape that I'm planning on reusing, but I just want to mark a front corner for myself so I know where that is. And then I'll do the same on the back. And I want to be 1.5 inches back from the front. No real reason otherwise, other than it avoids anything splitting out this direction, and I think it'll just help space things out nicely. I need to do 1.5 plus 1/2, which is 2. There is a roughly 1/2 inch offset between the back of the shelf and the back of the actual side, and that's for our back to go on later. So I just want this to be the same 1.5 inches in. And I'm going to try to use the sector here because I have it. Is we will go from that line to that line, and I'm going to want to divide it into, I think, 4. So what we do is we take our L and our L. That's my total width from here to here. And then we come up the scale for 4, the dot on 4 to the dot on 4. And then what that'll get us is like we just did. We walked straight through that way, and it gets us right to that line. And make sure that you actually try to stick to about the center of the tape, because that should be about the center of our board. Nails are roughly 1.5 inches. They're 40 millimeters. And these are the Riviere nails that Lee Valley sells. And they are tapered from top to bottom in all 4 sides. What I'm going to do is pre-drill all of these. And how do you select your drill bit size? You want to find a drill bit that goes roughly 2/3, maybe halfway up. Whether you're straight this way isn't quite as critical as if you're straight this way, because you don't want to come out the side. That would not be good. So we will eyeball that. We can take our tape off very carefully. I can basically put the back edge of my tape into the remainder of the dado for the shelf. And then I can line up this tape with the front of the shelf. And then we can go through and get all these too. You could also do this with a scrap piece of wood too and just drill the holes in that, lay it on there and go, but this seems to work. I will probably make a new one of those, but we will set it aside regardless. This part isn't strictly necessary, but I'm just going to knock off the fuzzies with a little countersink. Again, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to anyway. Now we drive our nails in and hope for the best. Looks like none of them came out the side and none of them split. Call that a win. Basically the same thing on the back here. So this is offset about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to add 3/8. So that should put me right in the middle. So this is 4 inches. 4 minus 1.5 would be 2.5. And 1.5 and 2.5 is only an inch apart. So I don't think I want to go there. So I don't think those are spaced out far enough. So these ones I'm probably going to drill a little bit deeper. And I will offset those at 1 inch. So we'll go 1 inch down from the top, 2, so we'll be at 3 inches. And that'll put us there and here, which I think should do okay. I'll just lay these 2 squares on there so I know roughly where I need to mark. And we will be painting over these anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. But it's always good to practice well, right? And I'm going to mark these with an awl since I am not stepping them out with my dividers. And wish me luck here. Didn't hear anything split. All right, we will do the same thing around here on the bottom, and then we will save the other side for when my son is here. I have our beadboard backing in. I've already planed off the edge of one of them because I need to make some space and I wanted to be able to get it flat up against the side. So I have got tongue and groove boards is what they are, but they're beaded. I have a piece clamped to the top, and the point of that is I'm just going to get a consistent spacing down from the top. You could butt them right up to the very top to make them flush, but I just thought they might look a little bit better if I recessed them just a hair, because then we won't see the tops of them poking up. I've got a divider set, so that way when I go from where the groove is, it'll land me right in the middle. And with the starter piece that has no groove, I'm going to butt that up and I'm going to step those holes off. And I've got two different sizes here. One is in my son's drill. So this I'm going to use for the top, where I'm using, these are actually carpet tacks, and they are square, but more importantly, they're short enough to not go through this, which is only 3/4 of an inch thick. And then for everything else, I'm just using like cut nail brads, and those require an actual pilot. And unlike the square nails that we drove in the sides, these are only tapered in one direction. So you use the drill bit that is the same width as the skinny direction of your cut nails. It's also important that the wedge goes with the grain on the top board that you're doing. I'm gonna use my divider here, and I'm going to just kind of mark here, and then we'll do the same thing for each shelf. Again, you kind of want to try to get to the middle of the shelf if possible, just so you don't have any issues there. So I'm going to use this drill. This nail is wedged this direction, and it's straight this direction. Make sure that's the way you have it. And then stop hitting it when it quits moving. Yeah, I think I'm gonna nail those. I was debating there if I was going to or not, but I think I should. So we'll drop that into our divider marker. Drill our starter hole. And then these are some little guys. And I'm not coming through. All right, so that is the first one in. Second one goes in just like that. I have some saw plate cut off that I'm going to use as a spacer. You could use folded up paper, you could use a washer. I liked the idea of using this just because it's flatter, which was kind of a thing. All right, and I'm going to mark out my brad locations here. And I'm just giving myself a little bit of space for expansion and contraction. I'm in the summer right now, so it shouldn't get a whole lot bigger, but you never know. So I'm just going to give it a little bit just to be safe. Then we just sort of march our way all the way down this way. And then very similar to before, I just kind of went through and did most of them, and then I left a handful for my son to come back and help with. I should also probably note that that hand drill is his hand drill, and I'm using a brad nail, so just like a wire brad as a drill bit, because it doesn't really displace a lot of wood, and then also just is a good friction fit for the carpet tacks that I was using. So here my son was having some fun, pounding some nails. He actually does pretty good. I think he probably only missed maybe 3 or 4 times total in this whole thing, and hit the back of it. So yeah, it doesn't get the most power behind his hammer hits, but that's all in time. Aim first, power later, right? And plane off some of the edge of it to make sure that it fit well. And so then we come in here, and this time I actually marked off that same distance from both sides, and he wanted to try the dividers there, so we gave that a try. But basically this one, because there's nothing holding the other edge down, I put 2 rows of nails all the way down just to make sure that it would hold down on both edges. After that, we had all of the nails pounded in on the sideboards, so we started to paint. This time we used a roller because it is flat and there aren't really any details to get around. And so what we did is he had me do the outside edge, and then he would come in and fill the inside. I just scuffed with a red Scotch-Brite pad in between, and then came back and did the second coat. After that, it was time for wax, and it was pretty much the same as before. So he came back and helped. I started putting the wax on with a brush, and then I gave him a sanding pad with a white Scotch-Brite on it and had him go ahead and kind of spread that out and get a nice even coat. And then he came back in with the rag and realized that he can't really push that well, so he had me finish it up. And then he had to get up on my shop stool and inspect our work, and then we signed it with his phrase, "We did it! Dad and Cam." So he was pretty proud of it, as I think he should be. I told him I thought we did a really good job. So we got that up, put it in his room, got his old bookcase cleared out, and then loaded up with stuff. And we even found a use for that model bookcase. We filled it with some of the little trinkets he had. And yeah, overall, this was a pretty fun project and surprisingly quick for me. Well, there you have it. There's the bookshelf. It's pretty well populated. We are both quite pleased with how it came out. Both of us actually kind of thought that certain things came out better than we thought it would. I wasn't sure about the colors at first. He picked them out. They actually worked out pretty well. And I think there weren't a whole lot of things that I would change if I were going to do it again. And I realized that this wasn't necessarily like a full-on project video. If that's something that you're looking for, you should hit the subscribe button and keep an eye out, because I do plan to build one of these for myself. Probably not these colors, but probably not too far off. Overall, it's a pretty quick project. I think we spent about 2-ish weeks on it. Some of that time was me waiting just so that he could get in on it. Like, I could have, for example, finished painting all of the beadboards in one night. I just decided to wait because that was the part that he was excited about, so I wanted to make sure that he had an opportunity to take care of some of that with me. I think it was a pretty good project for my son to help me out with, because it was relatively basic and there was a lot of painting, which, as it turns out, was his favorite part. And I'm thrilled with how it came out, but most importantly, I'm glad that my son and I got to hang out a little bit out in the shop and get some stuff done, because it's always fun to do those two things. Anyway, I appreciate those that stuck around, and I will catch you in the next one. Put my bookshelf up on stilts. I'm too old for that.